we rarely talk about women's soccer, but today is a new day. We're going to dive right into some talk on the U.S. Women's National Team, who just recently dropped their last two matches, one huge game at Wembley against England, losing 1-2, and then against Spain just the other day, 0-2. Julia, this team has just not looked the same recently.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to say how excited I am to be able to talk women's national team. I super wish it was under better circumstances. First time talking women.
What can you do?
A historically great team, and the first time we're talking about it is in their historical drought. But you got to take what you can get. Mm-hmm. But yes, they have not looked good. Losing to England 2-1 and then losing to Spain 2-0, which I think it's important to note, Spain's team is not even Spain right now. 14 of their players straight up quit. They said, no, we are not playing under this head coach, and they did not report to camp. So instead of firing that coach, they were like, okay, we're just going to bring in 14 new players. So just to put it into context, the U.S. Women's National Team did not lose to Spain. They lost to Spain's junior varsity team. And this telling me that 2 years ago, I would have laughed in your face, because this is supposed to be a dominating country, and they haven't looked it.
No, absolutely not. And you mentioned just the amount of people missing from that Spain side, but the U.S. have been missing a couple of key players as well. Alex Morgan has been out, Julie Ertz. That really strong defensive mid spot has now been lacking that depth without Ertz. Mallory Pugh has just been out recently, and it just keeps adding up. And this team is really getting messed with in terms of its chemistry, just because there's a new rebuild now with going on where they're trying to incorporate these younger, talented players. You look at Trinity Rodman as just one example to try and weave into some new young feet in between people like Ertz or people like Sauerbrunn. And it really doesn't work when you keep swapping all of these players out. And I know the lineup stayed the same for both England and Spain, and I think that was a mistake. I think there was a couple bad moves on their part, specifically with Girma, who didn't get the start against Spain. I thought she was so solid at the center back position. Huerta was also not playing in that match. It's a real shame to see some of these really talented players not be in this lineup at this point.
Absolutely, and it's kind of hard to keep up with what Vlatko is trying to do here, Vlatko Adanovsky, the head coach, because he's bringing in these new players to see what they can do, but then doesn't play them. So you bring in all of these fresh faces of the National Women's Soccer League and then leave them on the bench, and it's like, what was your point of bringing them? Why not just bring in these veteran players who haven't been on the national team in a while and see if veteran status works? Because right now, changing the lineup or bringing in new players every camp is not doing the job.
Right. And you mentioned just, to me, the big factor for this team has just been the lack of offense. I think that top six has just really not connected very well. There's a disconnect. I think Rose Lavelle is doing all she can to really hold this team together, but she has really been the solid person in that attacking six. Megan Rapinoe, to me, has absolutely declined in these last two matches. As your main person who takes your corners, as the person who sets up all of these set pieces, you have to make sure that your corner kicks are just on point and getting in that box in the most dangerous spot. If you're not doing that, if you're missing that constantly, that's almost 50% of how you're going to score a goal. You're not going to score a goal against England on a breakaway. It's just not going to happen. Their defense is incredible. They are the Euro champions for a reason. They shut down the defense so easily, the offense so easily. And you just got to wonder, what is going on with this attacking six? Why is there no fresh faces in it? And I think it even becomes more clear when you look at that Spain match and you look at them playing a five-back, and to play a five-back is incredibly difficult if you want to run the ball just like the way the U.S. women want to do.
Yeah, I mean, and another point to make is you look just 10 months from now, it's World Cup time. Less than a year, and we're dropping multiple games in a row. I mean, there's all kinds of stats that we, record-breaking negatively for the U.S. Women's National Team. It's been, several years since we've lost 2 games in a row. We were held scoreless in a few games that we're not used to doing. And you make a really good point about Megan Rapinoe not doing her job well. When you think of the U.S. Women's National Team, what usually comes to mind is the attacking in the midfield and not really the defense. So with that being said, you have to really take advantage of those opportunities to set your attacking players up. And Megan Rapinoe's not doing that right now.
I think one of the other cute things that we really picked up on is that these problems aren't new with this team. You go back all the way to the 2021 Olympics. They were shut out 3 times in 6 games. You fast forward to the CONCACAF tournament this summer. They only won their games by a single goal. That's not good when you're playing teams like Mexico and Canada. You're winning that CONCACAF championship match by 1-0. That is dangerous to play that game when you're going in to play some of the top hot Euro teams right now. It's not the same as what we're seeing in the CONCACAF. It's a completely different league. You know, England came out and beat Germany in this Euros, and they played absolutely incredible. They are becoming and rising in the ranks to be that hopefully number 2, number 3 spot behind the U.S. is number 1 currently. We don't even know if the U.S. are going to fit in number 1 after all of these losses at this point. And so it's frustrating to see that this is not a new problem. This is something that Vlatko just hasn't addressed. And I don't even know what he can do to fix it at this point other than really move around this offensive lineup. Get your young stars into the lineup, get their legs hot, get them fresh. You got girls like Trinity Rodman, you got Huerta, you have Gurma. Let them play. You got to get them in this lineup.
Exactly, and I think the one common denominator here is Vlatko not doing the best of his job. And I've been saying it since the Olympics because I was that person who was staying up till 4 a.m. to see these Olympic matches live, and I was upset frequently that I was like ruining my sleep schedule to watch this because like I'm watching this and I know as someone who doesn't study tactics, I'm like, this isn't right. And the common denominator here, like Jill Ellis's run, she won tournaments, and Vlatko hasn't fit into that role very naturally. And I think it's something that needs to be addressed before we go into real World Cup time because it's not working right now. We are losing. We're not playing well. We're not scoring a lot. And that's not something we're used to. And bold take, Laura Harvey, head coach of OL Reign in the National Women's Soccer League. She wins everywhere. I have been saying this for so long. I don't know why she wasn't hired before. I don't know why she's not head coach now. But I really, really think they could benefit from a change.
And I think, too, there's a real big chemistry issue on this team. And that goes back to what Carly Lloyd said on her exit, where she said there was a big disconnect on this team. And I think that is still transition now. You have these older players that still think they're guaranteed all of this playing time when they're not really performing. You look at the English team and you look at the Spanish team, young people. This is not an old team like we're seeing in the past. And it's worked in the U.S.'s past to have those older veterans in that lineup. When you had the Hope Solo, when you had Alex Morgan in her prime, when you had Carly Lloyd, when you had Becky Sauerbrunn in her youth. Now you see these players that are entering into their 30s and you're playing against 17-year-olds now. The 17-year-olds are going to beat you on speed any day of the week. That's just how it is. That's just how bodies are. And really with this team, there is a chemistry. Vlatko has not addressed it, and I think going forward that has to be a primary concern alongside that offensive and maybe even, like you mentioned, finding a new coach at this point because it's not really looking good for them heading into these next couple matches where they play Germany. They'll be in New Jersey, actually, for one of those matches where I know we're hoping to go to that one desperately, but fingers crossed for that one. But that will kind of do it for our U.S. women's national team talk today. It's definitely been a thriller. I love talking about soccer. We're both soccer players from our past.
Indeed.
So that was
perfect
definitely
way to say it.
I know. I was really trying to struggle through that one. But thank you for listening to this segment.